in a pretty effective way. That's the kind of thing he probably, doesn't get enough credit for. And, I think and John Stinchcombe's talked about this plenty. The fact that you very rarely hear anything about him, I think speaks to just how well he does his job all the way around, that there's no reason to criticize. That means as an offensive lineman, he must be keeping his quarterback clean, which is obviously the name of the game and the job to do. Barry Watkins checks in to give us Dogs 35, Wolverine 17. He says Stetson 300-plus yards. Pickens and Bowers both have 100 yards receiving. So a very optimistic appraisal of the situation there from Barry Watkins. And who knows, maybe Barry turns out to be right about that. J-Bob mentioning storms racing across Georgia. Yeah, I heard some about that from my neighbors a little bit. For all of you, I hope that you're staying safe, and I hope that your property is staying damage-free. I'm sorry to hear about that. Clearly, we're down here enjoying some gorgeous weather right now, but I do understand the weather has not been good in Georgia. In fact, I know at one point in time this week there was some chatter about this weekend being very cold in Georgia. Is that still true? Because obviously from down here, you almost forget that cold weather, rainy weather even exists. It's been so nice where we are down here in Miami. I got some quotes coming in from the Kirby-Harbaugh joint presser. I'll share those with you together in a moment here. DT, thanks for the kind words and the shirt. Yeah, I wanted to kind of look the part while we're down here. First of all, I'm a little bit of a beach guy, so I like the tropical shirts. I like that kind of stuff, kind of all the way around. But yeah, so I like to kind of look the part when we're down here, and so I appreciate you noticing that. Thanks a lot. Let me get a couple more quotes, and then we'll go live on all the platforms. JB, thanks for the kind words. I appreciate that. Mark Morris says our offensive line has done a good job all year long with pass protection like Sawyer and McClendon to neutralize the Michigan Stars. Yeah, so what he's saying is he likes them to be able to do that. Yeah, I think that you're probably right about that, Mark. I do think that they've done a pretty good job with that. Now, I would say that the Ojabo, Hutchinson combination is a little bit different type of thing than maybe Georgia dealt with in the past. But you better believe, and we're going to talk more about this in a moment, these Georgia players have heard all of the stuff that's been said. I mean, I talked to Mike Griffith about this last night. There's no doubt that Georgia's the other team in this game, that this is from a national media perspective. And I'm not trying to, I'm not whining about this. I'm just pointing out we could have expected this coming into the game, and it's turned out to be true, that because Michigan hasn't been in the playoff in a while, Michigan's got a large fan base, that it was going to be very easy for the national media to gravitate towards Michigan. I'm sure a lot of the national-type folks who are here, TV, print, whatever else, I'm sure they feel like they've covered the Georgia story before. They haven't had a chance to cover the Michigan story in a while, and they're probably naturally gravitating towards that because of this. But as that continues to happen and the hype continues to build around this Michigan team, who still is more than a touchdown underdog in this game, it's really weird how the traditional media and the gambling public seem to view this game very differently. Whereas, like, the media only seems to want to talk about Michigan, gambling folks have been quite content to establish Georgia as a very solid favorite and haven't moved off that spot at all. So there's a little bit of difference here in terms of the way the two communities kind of look at this all the way around. But the point that I'm arriving at, as Mark Morris pointed out, the Georgia offensive line has done a good job protecting quarterbacks. And no doubt the Georgia defense, in comparison to these Michigan pass rushers, the Georgia offensive line in terms of the task of stopping these guys, that all of this has the potential of being fuel. We'll actually kind of start the show with something pretty close to that in a moment. But there's no doubt that chatter is very hard to ignore here right now. So we are live on all the platforms. We'll get ready to get going here with the regular show in just a moment. Apparently it was a pretty boring press conference between Harbaugh and Smart jointly together today. I guess you're probably not all that surprised by that, but we'll give you some of that here coming up in a moment. All right, let me get a couple more of our first and 15 comments before we get started here. Dewdog says, I feel that Zeus needs to have a big game. He's due. And, yeah, listen, I've been saying this now for a while, that if you go back and look at all the things from the Alabama game that have been dissected 100 different ways, the breakdowns of the Georgia defense, the questions that arise with the Georgia quarterback, and all that's very fair to discuss, and it should be discussed. The one thing that I don't think quite has got enough attention is the fact that whether it be by choice or by force, Georgia didn't run the ball, very much, very well against Alabama. And, this is a Georgia team that's in the playoff now in 2021. It's only natural then to make a comparison to the Georgia team that was in the playoff back in 2017. I got to tell you, when I look at, the old school newspaper thing where you have, like, the quarterback, the coaching, the intangibles, offensive and defensive lines, you kind of line up all the things, I'm going to put a lot of checks in the box next to the 2021 team. They're a better defense, I believe. Better overall skilled, position players. The wide receiver spot, I think that's probably true. I would say that what Bennett's done has been better than what Fromm gave you in 2017 from a quarterback standpoint. Fromm didn't throw the ball very much back then. He was much better as a sophomore, I would say, in 2018. I think Bennett's been better than Fromm was in 2017. But the one area in which I just don't think this Georgia team right now has been able to show that it matches up effectively what the Dogs did in 2017 is when it comes to running the football. And that's obviously easy to understand why. DeAndre Swift, for goodness sakes, was the third-string running back in 2017. The tandem of Nick Chubb and Sony Michel was maybe the best tandem of college running backs that have ever played together. So it's clear that Georgia had an unbelievable talent collection when it came to running back spot in 2017. But if Georgia's going to win the national championship, if Georgia is going to win on Friday, then as our commenter pointed out a moment ago, Dog, finding some way to get a little bit more into this running game, whether it's Zamir White, whether it's James Cook, whether it's Kendall Milton coming back from injury, the assumption is that he'll play, or being creative in how you use Kenny McIntosh, one way or another, you've got to get more out of your Georgia running game. I don't think that's been talked about enough, but to me, that's a fairly substantial issue facing UGA right now. So great comments. We're going to do more of these. As we're going to be pretty casual during the show today. I'm going to go guest-free to give you a chance to speak a little bit more. We will hear from Kirby Smart. We will hear from some Georgia players. We'll talk more about that motivational edge. Also that I think that Georgia could potentially have. Also, here's something else I kind of want to do today, and this is sort of impromptu a little bit. I want to compare the way that Georgia is preparing for the Orange Bowl with the way that Alabama is preparing for the Cotton Bowl. And at least the perception that you get is that the two teams may be doing things slightly different in one pretty significant regard. So we'll talk about that on the program today and just kind of do a lot of stuff all the way around. So with that, let's go ahead and dive into it. Glad to have you with us. It's Dog Nation Daily, the daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans. It's presented by Merriweather and Tharp. And across all of our video platforms, it begins right now. And good morning to you. Welcome into our program here today, Dog Nation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. We are live here in Miami for the Orange Bowl, getting ready for the Dogs and the Michigan Wolverines tomorrow. I know for a lot of you, you're excited about the fact that the talking is nearly done. Not that, listen, I talk for a living, so I'm always happy to have a little talking out there. But for the most part, we're talking about a time in which this game has been sort of cut up every way that it can. At a certain point, the only thing left to do is to play the game. And that's what both Georgia and Michigan get a chance to do tomorrow. I know a lot of folks are pretty excited about that. Over the course of our program here today, we'll give you a chance to hear from Georgia's Coach Kirby Smart. We'll hear from Jamari Salyer. We'll hear from Trayvon Walker a little bit. We'll get into some issues later on with some of the COVID stuff that Georgia's dealing with. I want to do kind of a comparison here between how Kirby Smart is preparing for the Rose Bowl. I should say the Rose Bowl. Excuse me. That's a Freudian slip. How he's preparing for the Orange Bowl in comparison to how maybe Alabama's handling things over in Dallas right now. There seems to be a little bit of a difference related to that. We'll talk about that. We'll do a little bit on the quarterback stuff. We did a lot on quarterback yesterday. There was some new stuff that came out on Wednesday, so want to share some of that with you, but we're going to try to not be just dominated by quarterback talk. I made this promise to you right after the SEC championship that when it was relevant to do so, we'd bring it up, and when it wasn't relevant to do so, we weren't going to just drag it back out, to clout chase here and, stir up trouble and just because we can. We're not going to use our platform that way. So we'll hear from some audio from Kirby Smart, what he said about the quarterback situation yesterday. I do think it was pretty interesting. And with that, after that, pretty much everything that can be said has been said. Also, we're kind of in pregame mode here, down here in South Florida. The final press conference of the week took place this morning just before our show began. It was a joint press conference between Jim Harbaugh and Kirby Smart. I was in the middle of, kind of getting the finishing touches on today's show, so I didn't hear a lot of that, but I'm told it's pretty boring, to be honest with you, which is you probably wouldn't, I'm looking at the quote here I'm about to read to you. The point is you're probably not too surprised that Harbaugh and Kirby Smart would have not exactly the most firework-filled press conference, but I will read this to you. That Kirby Smart said he remembered when Jim Harbaugh took his shirt off at a satellite camp in Prattville, Alabama. Y'all remember back in 2016 when Harbaugh first took the job, obviously, in Michigan, a place where participation rates for high school football are going down. the caliber of athlete, just not quite as good anyway. That one of the challenges that any Big Ten coach faces is how you recruit and compete on the national level against a program like what would exist in the SEC, just knowing that you don't have the kind of geographic level of talent you can pull from there. And so Harbaugh created those satellite camps, and he wanted to come do that, down here in the South. And that's what Harbaugh, it's what I should say, that's what Smart is referencing there. The fact that Harbaugh came, he took his shirt off, and Harbaugh says, I could never do that, and he laughs about that. And Harbaugh says they were playing a shirts versus skins game, so apparently Smart and Harbaugh having a little bit of fun together before the action gets going on Friday. And, of course, I'll also say this to begin. In light of Harbaugh and Smart doing that press conference there yesterday, the contrast that exists between what's happening right now in Miami and what's happening a lot of other places around the bowl world, boy, it just couldn't be more different. And, one of the themes that I think we try to, circle back to a lot on the show is that Georgia fans really do have a lot going for them. And that Georgia fans really do have a lot to be, I hate to put it this way, but a lot to be thankful for, a lot to be grateful for. And not to say you can't ever be disappointed about anything, and not to say you can't ever get frustrated, as a fan, as a human being. It's just only natural to sometimes get a little frustrated with what you might be seeing in any particular situation. That's just only natural. But think about how weird bowl season has been so much around the rest of college football. I mean, you've had games not taking place. You had games that were canceled just a few hours before the games were supposed to occur. You had teams, in one case, fly all the way across country to Hawaii. In another case, fly all the way across country to California, only to find out that once they got there, the game wasn't going to happen. They were there in location, ready for the game, and the game got canceled. You've got coaches being doused with buckets of mayonnaise and, crunchy snack treats and, just any number of things that have just kind of become where bowl season to a certain extent almost feels like a little bit of a sideshow now. And, we've all had to make peace with the opt-outs and things like that. I'm a little bit more of a traditional guy. I don't love the fact that so many players are choosing not to play. I don't love the fact that some programs, I just flat out believe, have used the cover of COVID to get out of a game. They just didn't want to play anyway. I get frustrated with kind of all that, and to a degree you have to make peace with a lot of that. But when you see how crazy college football is all around the landscape right now, how many games have just been really tarnished by whether it's an uncontrollable thing like the Omicron virus or variant, or just the shifting landscape of college football with more players now using their right to opt out not to play in these games. The fact that Georgia and Michigan on Friday are playing in a game in which that's not an issue at all. The motivation level is intense. This is a Georgia team that's very much ready to go on all of this. Michigan, you got to presume, is very much the same way. And yeah, Georgia's trying to shake off a loss, and for some fans that hasn't been the easiest thing to do. But overall, this is a football game about football, and everybody here is taking that very seriously. There's an intensity of even the questions. When you listen to some of the press conference stuff, you go to the Dog Nation YouTube page, you can watch all of that there. There's an intensity to all of this that it has that big game vibe, that big game feel. Go look at, Dabo Swinney dressed up in a big orange costume before the Cheez-It game, or some of the stuff that's kind of gone on in some of the other places. And, think about Florida fighting with UCF in the Gasparilla Bowl there in Tampa and how silly all that seemed. The fact that Georgia has avoided that silliness during bowl season, and the fact that Georgia's playing in a game that's being treated as a big game and everyone feels like it's a big game, I think that's the kind of thing you got to appreciate. And it really kind of continues a theme that we've talked about a lot this year. At one point earlier in the year, there were upsets occurring all over college football, and it was being described as, it's a year of chaos around the sport. And what we said was, it's fine for the rest of the sport to be chaotic, but Georgia doesn't have to participate in that chaos. Georgia can't avoid that. And for a 12-0 regular season, that's exactly what Georgia did. And when you got to National Signing Day kind of became crazier this year than it had ever been before. I mean, the first National Signing Day, the beginning of the early signing period. You had all kinds of crazy stories being covered about how name, image, likeness might be impacting where players were going and who was doing what. And for the most part, Georgia also sidestepped that drama as well. Didn't get every player it would like to have gotten, but it put together an elite class. It's in the process of putting together an elite class. And the chaos and the rumor mill and the NIL stuff, for the most part, Georgia just wasn't really caught up in that at all. And now we're here in bowl season where there's even more craziness, even more chaos, even more, frankly, silliness around the sport. And yet there's nothing silly about Georgia, Michigan getting ready for this game. You can say, Kirby and Harbaugh were boring in their joint press conference today. They very well might have been. but at least the boring, the what is the word I'm looking for? At least the boring nature of their comments, at least it speaks to the serious nature of this game. So, frankly, as pretty as it is down in South Florida and as much fun it is to travel, and if you get a chance to come see Georgia play in a bowl game, if you have the means to do so, you got to do that. As much fun it is to be in a location, a destination, the actual cool thing right now is the fact that Georgia and Michigan are getting ready to play a football game that matters. And when you compare that to a lot of what's going on in the rest of college football, that's just simply not the case. So keep that in mind as the final finishing touches get put on the preparation here for this game on Friday. Now, one of the themes that I've kind of touched on a lot, and I want to circle back on here right now, is what I think is a potential extra level of motivation for Georgia, if it wants to use it this way, and publicly it won't do this at all, but the way in which Michigan's being talked up right now. Listen, talking up Michigan's not a mistake. Michigan's a very good football team. But the way in which this is happening, I think, has led Georgia to be treated almost as an afterthought here in some of the media coverage. They're very much, as I've said before, the other team in this game. Media hasn't had a chance to write about Michigan in a long time. Michigan hasn't been very good. Haven't had a chance to put Michigan stories on TV very frequently. Michigan's been pretty irrelevant. Michigan is a big state school in the Big Ten. A lot of alumni. There's a big fan base here. So when you can serve that audience, that's what most of the profit-driven media is going to want to do. They're going to want to give those Michigan stories to you. And so that's some of what we've kind of gotten in the build-up to this game. But some of that also comes at the expense of forgetting that, hey, you know what? Georgia's also a really good team there as well. Georgia's more than a touchdown favorite in this game. Let's not forget that. And that's true for a reason. So I want to kind of put a little package together for you here for a moment. This is, Kirby Smart talking about Aiden Hutchinson and David Ojabo, the terrific pass rushers for Michigan, who legitimately are worthy of being praised, and they ought to be discussed. And Georgia ought to have a plan for how it prepares to block those guys. I mean, you got to have a plan for what you want to do with them. And yeah, Georgia also has to have a plan for how it wants to be just as impactful on its own defensive side as Michigan wants to be on Friday there as well. But when you listen to the way in which these questions keep coming up, I think that it does offer the potential of giving guys like Trayvon Walker, who you're going to hear from in just a moment, to say, you know what? We're actually pretty good, too. Now, I'm glad that Ojabo and Hutchinson are as good as they are. But you know what? Let's not forget, we've actually had a pretty good season as well. Did you see the stats we've been putting up week after week all throughout this year? And, yeah, it may not be the individual glory that a guy like Hutchinson's gotten. It may not be, right now another top 10 pick type thing the way that Ojabo, potentially projects to be. But the defensive story for Georgia, I think, speaks for itself here this year, and they've done it in pretty selfless manner all season long. So let me let you hear a couple of minutes worth here. When we're on the road, sometimes it makes more sense to kind of splice a couple of things together. So this is Kirby Smart talking about the two excellent pass rushers for Michigan. Jamari Salyer eagerly greeting the challenge of blocking those guys. And Trayvon Walker saying, you know what? We actually hope to play just as well on Friday as these certainly, very well-hyped Michigan players plan on doing. So as a way of getting things going here on Dog Nation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, let me let you hear all of that right now, live from Miami, as our Orange Bowl coverage continues.
The first thing you have to do is match their intensity. Regardless of the talent they have, the strain, the desire, the want to leaks through on the film. And you talk to people that have played them, it's one of the first things they talk about is, man, we didn't take into account how hard they played, how much effort, how much want to, how much desire. And that has to come from within. That doesn't come from a star that was given to you out of high school. That doesn't come from a reputation you got. That comes from within. What do you have inside you? What stamina do you have in the fourth quarter to pass pro or run block, whatever it requires in the fourth quarter, to outwork the player, outstrain the player in front of you? And those two guys just are tremendous. You can tell they push each other. They go against a really good offensive line every day in practice. Those guys are really big competitors, and they're a huge challenge for our offensive line. Our offensive line embraces challenges like this. They want these opportunities. It's what you come to college to go play against is the best in the country, whether that's the best in the country at run defense or best in the country at rushing the passer. You want to play against the best. You want to be measured against the best, and that's what the playoffs allow you to do.
That's a challenge that Georgia offensive tackle Jamari Salyer says that he's more than ready for.
Yes, it's definitely very exciting. Two great, very talented players. They present different matchups. Each of them are very good at different things, but both very talented players. I'm very excited for the matchup. Obviously heard both of their names pretty much for about a month now, so I'm excited to be able to spot the ball and go play. It's exciting. I'm sure they're excited to play me, just as excited as I am to play them. So we got great talent. They've got great talent, and we both play great talent all year. So it's, best on best. We're excited for it.
And of course, as Hutchinson and Ajabo continue to get attention from Michigan, hard not to notice that some of that's coming at the expense of a Georgia defensive line that's also had a great year as well. And Georgia defensive end Trayvon Walker says maybe that could be a little extra motivation for the Bulldogs.
It can be motivation, and those are two great players. But just for the guys that you named, me, Jordan Davis, and Nolan, we're just natural competitors. And for the most part, the guys that you named, we've all had to go through something in life to where we had to do opposite of what other people said that or thought that we could do. So we just have to go out and prove whatever they're saying wrong and just do our best.
Of course, Walker, Nolan Smith, and some of the other names mentioned are former five-star recruits, reinforcing the notion that Georgia's a truly elite recruiting program. Smart was asked on Wednesday if that recruiting edge also gave Georgia an edge when it comes to winning the game against Michigan on Friday.
I think the argument that they're more talented than anybody in the country boils down to how they play, because talent gets you so far, and effort and toughness are a lot of qualities that we demand here, and both sides of the ball and special teams. So we're certainly excited about the defensive players we got, and we're young at some positions on defense, and we're old at some positions on defense. It seems in my years of coaching, that you have one or the other. I've been through some really experienced teams in the secondary, been through some really experienced front teams. And this team has a lot of experience in the front and probably not as much in the secondary, but each year it's different. But this group's been fun to coach because they come to work every day. They've never really concerned themselves with outcomes and results. They've really just enjoyed working. They like to practice. They like being around each other. So I enjoy being around them. They've made it a joy to coach them. And it's not every year you get to coach a group like this. So we've certainly been excited. I think Dan and the defensive staff have done a tremendous job with those guys.
So interesting stuff there from Trayvon Walker there at the end, Jamari Salyer, and then of course Georgia coach Kirby Smart on what's going to the challenge of Michigan and how you stop those pass rushers, and also how Georgia creates that same level of success on its own defensive side coming up on Friday. And Kyle Cummings in our Facebook comment section, said that basically he was very confident in the game on Friday and he expected Georgia to play well. And I think this is the kind of point that that I guess I'm kind of getting to with all of this is that, when I talk about Georgia regaining its swagger, when I talk about Georgia getting that back, and when I, encourage fans to kind of, view the game the same way, I don't think I'm asking anybody to conjure up some sort of false sense of belief here, some sort of false sense of hope. And Georgia's been a better team than Michigan all season long. And yes, the last game certainly points in a different direction on that, but there's a reason why our memories have the ability to extend beyond just the most recent thing that we saw. I think one of the things you're seeing in the comment section all the way around here, as as things get, as the game gets closer and closer, one of the things that you're seeing is just a greater level of confidence among Georgia fans, that all of a sudden now you sort of get the impression they have fully turned their attention to the Michigan Wolverines. They have fully focused in on this opponent, and whatever memory they have of the previous game truly has been put behind them there for right now. That's what they've been able to do. And so, from that standpoint, they have been able to focus in on this, and they do make the comparison and say, yeah, you know what, Georgia has been the better team than Michigan. Georgia is ready to go out and win this game there on Friday. And if a guy like Trayvon Walker says the tension that the other guys are getting on the other side led me to play a better football game, then more power to him for that. If Jamari Salyer says the attention all these guys got and the belief that I wasn't going to be able to hold up and I wasn't going to be able to block them, that caused me to go out there and play better, then more power to them there for that there as well. That mindset, mental approach is a very important part of how you win a football game like this. And when you hear the questions, one right after the other, coming about, just how unstoppable this Michigan defense has been, or how diabolical Josh Gaddis has been as the Broyles Award-winning offensive coordinator. And I'm kind of probably exaggerating here a little bit because Michigan has had a good season. They're in this spot for a reason. But there's no doubt that to a lot of the folks who are here to cover this, the Michigan side of this just seems more interesting right now. So if Georgia can use that for a little extra motivation, if Georgia can kind of go out and play the nobody believed in us type card, even though they're technically a point spread favorite, then more power to them as they try to do that. My name's Brandon Adams. It's Dog Nation daily podcast for Georgia Bulldogs fans, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, and we're live here in South Florida, where tomorrow we'll make a couple minute drive, a couple miles away, and head over to a Hard Rock Stadium there in Miami Gardens and get ready for the Orange Bowl. Of course, coverage here on all the Dog Nation video channels, starting at 9:45 with our first and 15 on DogNation.com, the Dog Nation app, 10 a.m. on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Radio Noon, Athens Sports Radio 960 The Rev, all the podcast platforms there as well. Happy to be with you and happy to be able to bring you the sights and sounds from Miami, getting ready for that Orange Bowl. And, of course, we would not be able to do it without great sponsors like our friends at Merriweather and Tharp. And as much fun as it is to be here and enjoy the pageantry, getting ready for the Orange Bowl, obviously the subject of divorce is a lot less fun to talk about. It's not nearly as enjoyable a discussion, but it is also a reality for unfortunately, a sizable percentage of our audience. It's just the way that life works out. And so if you find yourself in that situation, the one thing that you can do to make this journey easier, not make it go away necessarily, but make the journey easier, one of the things that you can do is have a strong advocate on your side. That is what Merriweather and Tharp can certainly provide for you. They've been through these kinds of divorce cases thousands of times before. And yes, your situation is specific to you, of course, but the institutional knowledge that Merriweather and Tharp gains from having gone through this as often as they have, that's going to give them expertise, their lawyers, to be able to tell you exactly how the law is going to impact your life when it comes to some of the weightiest topics you can address. Your finances, your relationship with your children, maybe even more important than that. All of these things are a crucial part of the divorce process, and Merriweather and Tharp understands. They also understand the emotional toll that all of this can kind of take on you there as well. So they want to be there for you. They want to listen to your story, and they want to give you really strong expert legal advice about how you can manage the situation for the best possible outcome. So my advice to you is check them out online, theatlantadivorceteam.com. That's theatlantadivorceteam.com, and that'll get you in touch with Merriweather and Tharp. They're your source for Georgia divorce. They're good friends of ours here around Dog Nation, and we're happy to have them with us as we're live down here in Miami getting ready for the Orange Bowl. With that said, we're going to go guest-free today. What my hope is that in a few minutes I can bring a few more of your comments into the discussion and kind of almost treat you as if you're the guest today. I wanted to be a little bit casual on this final Dog Nation Daily before game day tomorrow, and so more input from you gives us a chance to do that. Now, we've also got a job to do there as well, which means you got to hear from the key figures who are going to factor into the outcome tomorrow. A lot of Kirby Smart on today's show. We'll do some of that related to some COVID stuff here in a moment. But I also want to make some room for you on today's program there as well. So get your comments in, dognation.com, Dog Nation on Facebook, YouTube. Of course, for our podcast radio audience, we appreciate you being here as well. For those of you that watch on video after the fact, we're always grateful for that too. But for those of you who are able to join us live, we'll see if we can get some of these throughout the program here today. With that said, let me go around the doghouse right now. It's presented today by our friends at Serve Pro, and I'm going to do something slightly impromptu here. I was going to do this as a part of the SEC through here in a moment, but I actually want to make a little bit of a comparison between Georgia coach Kirby Smart, Alabama coach Nick Saban, in terms of how they are preparing for the Orange Bowl right now. And I'm going to do this first with some audio connected together from Smart. This was his press conference on Wednesday about what Georgia is dealing with from a COVID standpoint. There were some things related to that Smart just simply did not want to go into detail on, but what Georgia is dealing with and how the COVID experience is impacting their time at the Orange Bowl all the way around. So this is Kirby on some COVID stuff, and it kind of leads into the fact that for the most part, there's still business as usual at the Orange Bowl, although the media schedule has been very different. The actual team schedule has not really been all that different, and despite the pandemic, despite the loss to Alabama, there is still a ton of excitement for this team to be where they are down here in South Florida, getting ready for the college football playoff. So listen to this from Kirby. This is from Wednesday. Then it leads us into a pretty interesting contrast when it comes to Alabama coach Nick Saban. So here on Dog Nation Daily and our Around the Doghouse presented by Serve Pro, this a little bit from Kirby on yesterday.
just across the country as a whole, it's obviously, you turn on the national news, it's the lead-in story. You look across the country, the impact it's had on other games, whether that be NBA, NFL, the bowl games that it's impacted, certainly had an impact across the country. Ron Corson and his staff have been unbelievable, just awesome. We've had protocols in place throughout the year, probably not as strict earlier in the year as it was last year with the vaccination and really the low numbers and issues. As Ron saw things starting to spike, we increased our sensitivity to that. He's done a tremendous job of that over really prior to the SEC championship. We increased a lot of things around our building and our awareness of our players and understanding what's going on. You know, he's had 4 different times. He's offered guys opportunities to get booster shots, and some of our guys have, some of them haven't, but they've really adhered to the policies we've asked them to and been able to steer clear for the most part. We had a little bout last couple weeks that we lost some guys and gotten most of those guys back, and really that's the biggest thing is being at full strength when you have to be, and that's what we're aiming towards.
Of course, Kirby says that whatever the COVID story is right now, it hasn't greatly impacted the experience they've had here in Miami for the Orange Bowl.
When it comes to COVID, the players have been able to do the outings. CFP has made it very safe for them to do that. I think probably the worst thing you could do would be have these kids come to a hotel and just be in the hotel for 4 days and not move and not do anything. So they've made it safe for our players to be able to function. As a matter of fact, being outside probably helps them more than anything else, as long as they're in a safe environment and not around crowds of people they don't know. So for the most part, our guys have done a tremendous job. They've done what we've asked them to do. And to be honest with you, the Orange Bowl staff has made it seamless. I mean, I don't remember a lot about the Rose Bowl, but where we stayed, I don't think we ever left the hotel. We didn't go out and do a lot. Now we did, I think, went to an amusement park maybe, and we haven't done that here. But we've had a tremendous time so far, and spent a lot of our time preparing, and locked in and focused. That's the most important thing is, how are we preparing for Michigan and are our guys building to a point of being ready to play at 7:30.
And overall, Smart says, despite COVID, despite the loss to Alabama in the SEC championship or anything else that might be going on, there is a lot of enthusiasm about Georgia being back and the college football playoff in the Orange Bowl with a chance to beat Michigan on Friday.
Being a CFP is where you want to be. All the tactical motivation techniques you have for whether it's Texas, Baylor, or Cincinnati in one of the New Year's Six bowls certainly creates a different kind of energy than this. This being in the CFP is, we really, when you pan the room, I think we've got, I don't know exactly how many, but 2 or 3 guys that can even remember being in that CFP and know what that was like. And when you look at those guys, they embrace that. They've been hungry for that opportunity. So I think every player, that's what you set out to do. So there's been no downside to that. The time in between is really the same, right? So the time between games is relatively the same that we would have regardless of what game we were in. The fact that you're in the playoff, it makes the practices so much more energetic, the work ethic so much better. And, coming off the loss of the SEC championship, certainly disappointed, but it was also a little bit of an awakening for our guys of where are the brutal truths and how can we work on those. And you grow probably the most you grow in a year after a loss, and things are made a lot more relevant to you when you have those.
So interesting stuff there from Kirby Smart on the excitement and enjoyment they have being around the Orange Bowl, being in the college football playoff, and essentially shrugging off anything that would maybe prevent them from feeling that way, and also addressing the COVID stuff. Smart was also asked on Wednesday directly, if he had players who are out right now, if he had players that were not there, and Smart simply said he wasn't going to talk about that at all. So, if you're curious about the full nature of this roster for Wednesday's game, for Friday's game, you won't be able to find that out until those pregame warm-ups, and obviously we'll have eyes on all of that when those players come out. The one thing I think you can say is, and this is not exactly the most scientific point, but, when you watch Mike's video Sunday of the team arriving, it was 3 full buses that come here. You know, you watch Brian Gant's video of the team on the yacht that we showed you on Dog Nation Daily on Monday. You know, that's, you know, 3, you know, this is not, you know, a situation where there's obviously a huge number of Georgia players missing, if any Georgia player missing at all. I mean, it's obvious that the overwhelming majority of the team is here, and we'll find out if any of those guys are either not able to play or maybe somebody that wasn't accounted for happens not to be here. There's also some news on a possible Michigan absence that we'll get to a little bit later on in the program today, kind of following up on something we also talked about yesterday. We'll do that with you here in a little bit. That was the one maybe news thing that came out of Jim Harbaugh today in the joint press conference he had with Kirby Smart. But here's what I want to do, though, for a couple of minutes, and this is kind of a little bit of a impromptu thing because I was going to do the Saban thing in the SEC through, but I actually want to bring it up and make a comparison here with Kirby Smart. You heard Smart talking about the team activities they've been a part of. We showed you some of the video earlier of on the yacht with the dinner there, and you know, I guess a couple of other things have kind of gone on there as well. It's not a ton of things necessarily. I believe they had a dinner together at a local restaurant last night. You know, that's some of the stuff that's gone on. And, you know, in a lot of ways, Georgia keeping a fairly normal bowl routine going, and it seems like for the most part, Smart, you know, kind of embraces that. By contrast, Nick Saban did his weekly radio show last night, and apparently those are not the kinds of things that Alabama is doing right now as it prepares for the college football playoff against Cincinnati. I want to read you this quote from Nick Saban, who says, "You're not going to remember what you did on Tuesday night in Dallas 3 months from now, 3 weeks from now, or 3 years from now. But you'll remember for the rest of your life what happens in this game." Sometimes, so basically saying they're not leaving the hotel room. That's basically what the gist of the Saban quote there. They're not leaving the hotel room. Now, it's not clear for me if that means they're not doing any of the sanctioned bowl activities or they're just not participating in free time. For the most part, the Georgia players, I don't think, have been doing a ton of the free time stuff either. I mean, I know that John Fitzpatrick said that for the most part he really hadn't left the hotel at all in terms of venturing out on his own. Maybe other players have. But as far as like the sanctioned bowl activities, Georgia's still participating in that, and still doing all that kind of stuff. And I can't quite tell from that quote from Nick Saban if that's what they're doing or not. I guess my point here on this is that I don't believe, even in the age of Omicron or whatever it's called, I don't believe the bowl experience is necessarily supposed to be, nor does it have to be, some sort of joyless experience where you're down here and you're locked in the hotel room and you're staring at a video screen the entire time watching film of your opponent. Frankly, I kind of agree with Kirby Smart here, and that I'm not even quite so sure that's the best way to prepare for a game like this. That Smart, you've heard him use the word strain before. Hey, how hard do you strain during the play? Says that about Aiden Hutchinson. He strains, so he works so hard. I think that Smart understands the nature of like full participation, full effort, what that looks like. And I think he knows that that's the kind of thing that's a finite resource, that you can't be full-on focused 24 hours a day for 3 consecutive weeks. You just can't do it. That you have to have ebbs and flows. You have to have peaks and valleys. You have to have, these moments in which you really do ratchet that focus and intensity up, but you can't stay at that red line forever. So I think that Kirby Smart, at least the best that I can tell, is more than happy to participate in these traditional bowl type events. And listen, I don't think Georgia's chances of winning this game are reduced because they had dinner on a boat, nor do I think their chances of winning this game are reduced because they had, whatever dinner at some restaurant or at some other point in time during the week. And as far as what's happening with the free time and stuff like that, I know that's always going to be a little bit of a concern, but and frankly, I'm not even aware of how much the Georgia players have really been doing. I'm not staying in Miami Beach. I'm staying here in Fort Lauderdale. But even if they did venture out of the hotel room a little bit, does anybody think, well, there you go, therefore they're not going to win the football game? I mean, this variant thing seems to be passing around very, very quickly no matter where you are, no matter what you're doing, no matter what precautions that you're taking. At least that's the best sense that I get. So I'm not really quite so sure that any of this really in the full control of coaches right now. But it seems like Nick Georgia fans stopping by to say hello and give us a Go Dogs here. But good to see you, sir. Thanks for coming by. Looking forward to it. Hey, I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Good to see you. Good to see you. So there you go. A Georgia fan stopping by to say hello and driving by. You never know when you're going to run into Georgia fans. I told you earlier, I think I said this either on the video show or wherever, that I haven't really seen a lot of Georgia fans yet. Well, I just saw one drive by right there. So there you go. A UGA fan getting ready to go and a listener to the show, so we certainly appreciate that. The point I'm getting to is that I'm sort of okay with Georgia having a bowl experience at a bowl. Now, you can't be out there wilding out or whatever, but I'm sort of okay with Georgia having a bowl experience at a bowl. And now that you move later into the week, you obviously get more locked down. It becomes like any other game day there at that time, any other situation where there are going to be a lot more, tightened up, and we won't hear from Georgia players and coaches again. But this notion that you got to lock the players in the hotel, you got to keep them there for a week, frankly, from Nick Saban's standpoint, that sounds more like false imprisonment than it does game day preparation. So that's clearly the message that Nick Saban wanted to send through his radio show. Seems like Georgia, the best that I can tell, might be doing things slightly different than that. But I don't think in this particular case that Georgia's going to be less focused for the game because, they had a little bit of fun while being in Miami. But nonetheless, that is Around the Doghouse, and it's presented today by our friends at ServPro. Of course, when it comes to fire and water damage, things that you might deal with, ServPro, obviously, the one to turn to for all that. Their restoration specialists can repair that damage caused by fire, caused by water, caused by whatever you might be dealing with. They can repair that like it never even happened. So check out ServPro today online at servpro.com. All of their franchises independently owned and operated. That means you're doing business with some folks that got skin in the game. They have a vested interest in the outcome much the same way you do. You love your home. They love their business. It's a mutually beneficial relationship when you turn your attention to ServPro. So online at servpro.com and find out what their restoration specialists can do for you. They can get you fixed up, get you repaired up, literally like that damage caused by fire, caused by water, what else, like it never even happened. So make sure you check out ServPro today for a lot more on that. So check them out. Good stuff there. All right, we're live here in Miami, South Florida. No guests today. We're going to have to try to make some room for your comments. We're going to try to make some room for your comments before the show is done here today. And obviously, what a lot of those comments have been related to is what's going on with quarterback. And I made the promise to you after the SEC championship game that I would only bring this up if it was relevant, right? We weren't going to keep dragging it out over and over again because while some people can't quite get enough of it, there are other people who kind of get tired of it. And listen, I try to be respectful of all opinions and at least, try to listen to what folks are saying out there. There are some people who still want more answers on this situation. There are other people who are like, listen, it feels like we're hearing the same thing over and over again. I kind of get it on both sides. Here's the point. On Wednesday, Kirby Smart was asked a couple of more questions related to quarterback, and I at least want this on the record on this show. I at least want this out there. So let me put this in terms of what it would take for JT Daniels to play in Friday's game and exactly why it is that Daniels went from being the unquestioned starter at the beginning of the season to now the role that he's in as a backup and really not playing at all right now. So this was Smart from Wednesday. A little more on that. Dog Nation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp, live from Miami. This is Kirby on the topic.
I think it's hard to say. I think it's all based on the situation in the game, the things you discussed prior to what's going on in the game, how has practice gone during the week and previous weeks. It's certainly something that we talk about as a staff. But, yeah, it's different than other positions when it comes to making that decision for your whole team. And certainly that guy is the face and the leader of the team and gets the most reps. But it's something that the offensive staff and ourselves, we talk about a lot. But I'll be honest with you, I've been really confident in Stetson. I'm confident in Stetson now. I'm confident in JT. And I thought Coach Monken did a great job addressing some of that yesterday. And we've got confidence in all our quarterbacks.
And Kirby Smart was also asked on Wednesday to readdress why the decision was made to switch JT Daniels as the starting quarterback at the beginning of the year.
We play every game independent of the previous, and we do what we have to do to put the best players out there in a position to win the game. Every decision we make as coaches is to give our team the best opportunity to win the game. We sit down as a staff and talk about it, and we had those talks throughout the year. And I think Stetson's played at a high level, done a really good job with our offense. He has not played perfect by no means, but he's played well. And it's a decision that we make as coaching staff. And for whatever reason, there's fans that may not agree with it. They may agree with it. Media may not agree with it, may agree with it. Our team understands that we're going to give our team the best opportunity to win, and we feel like Stetson does that. And that's not to knock on JT. That's the part that's so sad about this, is that you guys want to ask us as coaches questions. I want to answer them as honest as possible. But the hardest thing is every time you ask a question, you drive the comparison home. And really, at the end of the day, they're both different quarterbacks, and they're both good in their own right. And I think we've got 4 quarterbacks capable of winning big here at University of Georgia, and Stetson's our quarterback right now.
So interesting there on the quarterbacks. Couple of things that Smart was asked yesterday. One of the things that Smart was asked on that he did not directly want to answer yesterday was whether JT has been rusty on the practice field coming back from the COVID stuff that he dealt with. And Smart pretended not to understand the question, then kind of sidestepped it, saying there was nothing really to be added there on that. To me, that seems like a pretty relevant question. What JT's looked like at practice since coming back and having dealt with the COVID stuff, but that was not something that Smart wanted to address yesterday on that particular issue. But that's kind of where things stand there right now. Smart weighing in. Sounds like that Stetson Bennett is still the starting quarterback, and I guess maybe there's a path for Daniel still playing. I'm somewhat skeptical of what it would take to cause that to happen, for that to occur, regardless of what my personal feelings might be on that. I sort of am skeptical of that's the direction all this is going, but maybe there's also a path for that there as well. Smart addressing that topic there yesterday. Want to look at some of the other bowl stuff around the SEC and the rest of college football here for a moment as we go cruising around the SEC, courtesy of our friends at Royal Caribbean. You've heard me talking so much about the great cruises at Royal Caribbean, whether it be Perfect Day Coco Cay, which goes to that private island right there in the Bahamas. All the great destinations, the great ports of call. You watch the video, you see this all the time when we show this off to you. Gorgeous, gorgeous ships on Royal Caribbean. Great destinations like Perfect Day Coco Cay, if nothing else. And for a lot of you, you've been hearing me say this now for a while. If you don't do anything else with what I tell you on this, what I want you to do is I want you to go check out, find the video for yourself, find out more about just what makes Perfect Day Coco Cay such a fun destination, exclusively for those who are on a Royal Caribbean cruise ship. A lot of fun, and our friends at the Cruise and Vacation Authority got you covered on all of that. So make sure you check out Royal Caribbean. And, of course, we're happy to have them with us as we're cruising around the SEC, courtesy of Royal Caribbean here today. With that said, I told you before at the very top of the program, there seems to be a lot of silliness around the bowl season right now. Dave Doran, the NC State coach, frustrated because he went all the way out to California to play UCLA, only to have UCLA cancel on him the day of the game. And he had some, quote, I'm going to butcher it, but something along the lines of, basically using the NCAA acronym as a way of kind of, mocking them and making fun of how frustrated he was about all that has kind of gone down there on that, and you do get that. I don't, in this particular case, think the NCAA is the right ones to blame when it comes to this, but you have seen these teams, there have been, 5 bowl games impacted by cancellations. You've had teams that were supposed to play in one game move over and play another game, and it has been crazy. And I do get Doran's frustration on this because it's one thing if teams have sick players and they're too sick to be able to play, but in some of these particular cases, you get the instance they just don't want to play, and it's not that they're tied up in red tape or anything like that. They just are looking for an excuse to get out of the game. And there's at least been 1 or 2 instances where that's true. And if it's true for 1 or 2, it could be true for more than that there as well. It's not that we take illness lightly. We want players to be healthy and safe. We believe the teams should do everything they can to keep their players healthy and safe, and we think it's really pretty impressive how well college football's done there in that regard. But some of what has gone on around the bowl season doesn't seem to be exclusively able to be blamed on Omicron alone. It's not been a very dignified chapter for the sport, and so I kind of understand the frustration that Dave Doran's showing there a little bit there on that. As far as the rest of the bowls here coming up, let me give you the schedule for today, because really now the bowl schedule kind of kicks into gear in a way that it has not been prior to this. We're going to see a lot more SEC action, a lot more action involving ranked opponents. Yes, there are a lot of opt-outs, and yes, there are a lot of star players who are not playing, but things are really getting pretty hot right now. Like I think that, for instance, today, 11:30 a.m., as I'm finishing this live show today, the Duke's Mayo Bowl in Charlotte between North Carolina and South Carolina. Yes, these two teams have played a pretty good bit over the years, but this is a pretty good game. I know that in Shane Beamer's case, they really want to finish the season on a high note. They felt like they had momentum here this year. They want to get some of that back to close out the year in the bowl game. So I'm guessing that South Carolina is raring to go here for this one today. Another chance to see another SEC game later on this evening. 3 p.m. and Music City Bowl in Nashville between Tennessee and Purdue. Obviously, the Tennessee team that established also a first-year coach, much the same way that Beamer did for South Carolina. Josh Heupel in Tennessee did a lot of that there as well. And they get a chance to kind of go out there and finish that off against the Boilermakers today in their home state of Nashville. There'll be a lot of Vols fans there in Nashville for that. Las Vegas Bowl is also today between Wisconsin and Arizona State. Then you go to tomorrow. Obviously, the highlighted game for us is Georgia-Michigan in the Rose Bowl, but New Year's Eve pretty busy all the way around. You got Rutgers-Wake Forest starting 11 a.m. You've got Central Michigan-Washington State at 12:30. You've got Central Michigan and Boise. Actually, that game's been canceled. And then you start thinking about the tonight. You've also got the Pitt-Michigan State game in the Peach Bowl. Then you look ahead to January 1st, and you start to get some things going there as well. So you got some pretty busy bowl games right now. You kind of got a lot going on there on that. And this December 30th date here today is going to bring a lot more of that kind of back into discussion. So bowl season's kind of officially here. Those pre-Christmas warm-up bowls are kind of over. Pretty full slate today, pretty full slate there on the 31st. And then as you're either going back home from Miami or maybe getting settled in after hopefully seeing a Georgia win against Michigan, you can kind of settle in after that with a traditional January 1st and get ready to enjoy all those citruses and outbacks and all those games that are typically on New Year's Day. Have a pretty full slate there on that there as well. Check out my friends at Space Dogs, by the way. Space Dogs, the ones to turn to take the mystery out of crypto. They got a lot of great products for you. Dogs Token, Dogs Wallet, Space Card. Makes all the things that you're buying, the purchases that you're making online, safer, more secure. It's also a great way to just get acquainted with what crypto really is and how it can benefit your life. So I talk about it. They're better at explaining than I am. So check out their website. It's dogs.io for more on that. Website is dogs.io, obviously spelled D-A-W-G-S, dogs.io, and you can do a lot more on that today. So another piece of Georgia news I want to get to. Yesterday, when the Michigan players spoke during one of their media availabilities, they were asked questions about Daxton Hill, the outstanding safety for Michigan, and Michigan players at that time kind of forwarded all those questions on to Jim Harbaugh. Did not want to talk about that there at the time. Did not want to get into that. So that led, I think, a lot of us to believe, well, I guess Hill must really not be able to be playing. It had been kind of an interesting news cycle involving Dax Hill, who's a very good player, who'd been rumored to be involved in kind of a COVID situation. Early in the week, if you want to go back to, say, Tuesday, it seemed like Hill definitely was not going to play here, might not even be in Florida. On Wednesday, it seemed like there was a little bit more optimism related to Hill's status. I'm assuming that coincides with the CDC change in recommendation for the 5-day quarantine period that doesn't require the positive test coming out of it, as opposed to the 10-day deal that had been in place prior to that. But then yesterday, with the Michigan players saying what they said, it also once again seemed to kind of take a turn back in the other direction. So media folks today did do what the Michigan players asked them to do. They took the questions to Harbaugh directly about Hill, and what Harbaugh said about Hill today is that he is questionable for the game and would not answer directly about whether or not Hill is currently in Florida. So you're left to wonder, well, is he going to make some sort of game day arrival travel in? And if he does so, how effective could he possibly be? I sort of file this into the category of what I do with a lot of things, which is if you think a player is injured, he probably is. If you think something's up with the player, it probably is. And in the case of, this Harbaugh situation, Dax Hill, a very good safety, the kind of guy that would obviously be pretty valuable in a potential pass coverage matchup against Brock Bowers or maybe any number of other things there as well. Something's apparently going on here, and whether he arrives in Florida, plays or not, his status is 100% available, 100% effective in this game. I guess there's plenty of reason to be suspicious about that for right now. So that is one of the things that did come out of an otherwise benign press conference between Harbaugh and Smart held jointly today, is the fact that Hill, a very good safety for Michigan, has been called questionable, and Jim Harbaugh sidestepped the chance to answer directly about whether Hill was even in Florida. Of course, as you get ready for your game watching party or your New Year's Eve plans or anything like that, Classic City Lager goes great. It is, of course, from Creature Comforts Brewing Company. It's a taste of Athens. You don't have to be in Athens to get it. A lot of folks down here in South Florida have packed some in a cooler, and when they're tailgating on Friday before the game, they're going to be enjoying some Classic City Lager as they do that. So make sure you try some today. Wherever you're shopping, wherever you're picking up your groceries, you can pick up some Classic City Lager from Creature Comforts Brewing Company, available in 6 and 12-pack cans today. It is just good cold beer. I'm a simple guy. I like simple things. That's what Classic City Lager is, and you can try some for yourself, and I believe that you'll really enjoy it when you do. So check out Classic City Lager today. Okay, we'll wrap up our final Dog Nation Daily here prior to being in game day mode tomorrow from South Florida for the Orange Bowl. We'll do that with a golden shoe here. And I mentioned off the top the silliness related to the bowl season and how crazy this stuff has gotten. Take a look at this from the Cheez-It Bowl. So this is, Clemson last night. They're getting ready to be a part of the coin flip. You got the mascot flipping the coin. I mean, there's a certain part of this whole thing that's become very circus sideshow-like. I just am really, really glad that Georgia's not wrapped up in any of this right now. And part of me doesn't kind of mind the lighthearted, funny nature of all this, but I sort of like watching other teams go through it. There's going to be a coach get mayonnaise dumped on his head today. I sort of like other teams going through that. I don't necessarily want to be to see my favorite team kind of mixed up in all of that, but nonetheless, we'll make the Cheez-It Bowl our golden shoe winner for today for a very odd coin toss. And frankly, a lot of odd photos have come out of Orlando over the last few days related to that. Also, Gatorade Countdown Dogs getting ready to be back in Florida again next October. North Florida, though, business to take care of against those lousy, stinking Gators. 303 days from right now, we think that's what happens. Georgia over Florida there. That is our Gatorade Countdown. We appreciate all of you being here with us on Dog Nation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp today. I will see you tomorrow from the stadium on game day. Get ready to go, folks. Get taped up. Get ready. It is here. It's upon us. College football playoff. It's been a pleasure to cover it for you here on Dog Nation Daily, presented by Meriwether and Tharp. And on video. Time now for our R.S. Andrews cool down. We'll take a few of your comments as promised. And we can't go real long with this, but we're going to try to make some extra room for you today and do a few of these. So I'm glad to have you on board and glad to talk to you about everything that's kind of going on these final days of preparation for Georgia for this big game. Of course, R.S. Andrews, the one to turn to for your air conditioning, heating, plumbing, electric needs. Also, our buddy Dari Payro from R.S. Andrews is going to be on with us for a live edition of Go With The Flow a little later on today as we make our official picks for the bowl games coming up. That's going to go down in just a little bit of time. Don Wynn says, I'm flying down this afternoon. What's the Dog Nation schedule for tomorrow? So I'm definitely doing Kroger Kickoff from somewhere before the game. I'm going to try to be around the Fan Fest area before that a little bit, too. There's a chance we may do a video prior to Kroger Kickoff, just as long as we have some good content to be able to show for that. But that's one of the things that we want to be able to do for you. So I'm going to be there. Look for us around the stadium, be around the Fan Fest area. Obviously, on the field for some of the stuff there, too. So big day of coverage around Dog Nation. I'm glad you're flying in. I hope your flight works out okay. I hope you come in safely and with no issues. And we'll look forward to seeing you when you get here. Let's see what else. Barry Watkins says, who's going to be the Dogs MVP underneath the Friday Night Lights? First of all, I like the idea of Friday Night Lights. That's a pretty good theme for this game. I don't mind that. That's pretty good. That's a pretty good theme for sure. Who's my MVP for this game? How about Trayvon Walker? Heard Trayvon a little earlier. Trayvon maybe feeling like this Georgia defense not getting the love that it deserves. How about Trayvon makes a couple big plays? How does that sound to you? I don't mind that at all from a Trayvon Walker. I could see him having a big day. Let's see what else. Yeah, John Benton, he's like a lot of the rest of us. You got to kind of wear that game day. A lot of you have a kind of a pre-Friday game day routine, Friday pre-game day routine, and obviously today is that day before the game, even though tomorrow is Friday. Yeah, this bowl season, this kind of time of year is always a little hard to keep up with. It's always just a little bit weird. So a lot of you having to treat today like a Friday. Tomorrow's going to feel like a Saturday, but we'll make the best of it and we'll do what we can. And obviously, these are all very good problems to have. Jesse Barbie says, I look like Al Pacino in Scarface with that shirt. True Miami flavor right there. Where are the gold chains? Yeah, listen, I'm not going to lie to you. I watched Scarface again a few days before we came down here just because, I kind of like get in that Miami vibe. And also last night we drove over to South Beach for a little bit. I had my family with me. And, I made them listen to as we're driving, like, Miami and, kind of going through the skyline and stuff like that. The scene in Miami Vice where, like, they play In the Air Tonight and they're going to whatever. So very famous Miami Vice scene. So I was cranking up the In the Air tonight last night driving through Miami. So I have definitely tried to get into the festive spirit of where we are. Scarface, Miami Vice, everything else. Maybe Georgia can tell Harbaugh and them to say hello to their little friend coming up on Friday. Bubby Dean says, if Dax Hill doesn't go, how big of a game could Brock Bowers have? Yeah, I think it could be huge for him. I really do. I think it could be huge. But it's also one of those things of, if Georgia's going to win, they need Brock Bowers to have a big game anyway. That's a very valuable part of their pass catching, weaponry. And I know there was some chatter after the SEC championship that maybe they targeted him too much. Maybe Stetson threw to him too much. And of course, I understand where that comes from. You'd like to be as diverse as you can be, but there's a reason why they throw to Bowers as much as they do, because that's how effective as a weapon that he's been. Easy Brown says, I'm dodging the question about cover 4. Honestly, don't know the answer to that. We're all going to be on video today at 1. I'd say there's a chance we do something else there as well, but I don't know if we're doing cover 4 or not. I got to figure that out. But Mike and I were on video last night together, so we've done a lot of. We're still on a slightly different video schedule here right now, but if you missed it, Mike and I did Chase the Championship together last night. Kyle Cummings likes Nolan Smith to be the player of the game. Shelton Tucker, yes, I did pay for my family to come down here. Dog Nation's not paying for my family. Dog Nation would look at me like I was crazy if I said that. So, yes, my family is paid to come down. I paid their way to be here. Frank Patterson says, how about a big game from Zeus and Big O tomorrow? I like both those names, Darnell Washington, and, I think that the Zamir White's also a really good name to give you there, too. That, Georgia needs to be better in the running game, and that's what Zamir White obviously has a chance to provide for you. They just need more of that. That's one of the areas in which you're probably not quite what you once were in 2017. And, you don't have that kind of personnel, frankly, the running back spot right now. But, at least I don't think. But being a little more effective in the running game, if you're looking for a great recipe for victory, I believe that's certainly one of them. As we got overcast skies here again. But I'm sure y'all are probably just kind of okay with that. Michelle Rollerson over here on YouTube says she's got Brock Bowers for the MVP of the Orange Bowl. That's not a bad pick either. There has been a lot of chatter about Bowers this week. Jonathan Aaron says, who do you think will have the first touchdown, Cook or Brock? And who do you think besides Bennett will be the key player for our win? Listen, I know this. Jordan Davis, when Georgia was in Charlotte for the beginning of the season, he talked so much about that being his hometown. He talked so much about how excited he was to play there in that spot. I know James Cook, who's probably a little bit more mild-mannered than Jordan is. He probably doesn't speak quite as effusively about topics like this. But I do know that Cook himself was also quite excited about this as well. So I'd say there'd be no more fitting situation for Georgia if James Cook were to get the first touchdown. Now, Kenny McIntosh from South Florida as well. But James Cook is, he's like from right there in that Miami Gardens area. Like he really is right there in his area where he grew up. So, that's a nice thing for him to think that he could get that first touchdown for Georgia. I like the idea of that. Jim McLaughlin, thank you for the kind words. I appreciate that. And I am very excited about being here. I love the chance to talk to y'all about this each and every day. And by the way, there's no sun to move to now. It's just overcast here now. So y'all going to just have to deal with a little bit of shadows. But it's such a pleasure to be here. It's such a pleasure to talk to all of you about this. I just love what I get to do. And I feel that way after wins and losses. Obviously, the losses make it more difficult, but I feel that way after wins and losses. And it's just a special time to be around Georgia football. In the college football playoff again, down here in Miami for the Orange Bowl. These are just good times. This is good stuff. Foster Moss says he's got James Cook going for 100+. Nature Gator checking in about Sonny Crockett. I think that Nature, like some of these Florida folks, giving me a hard time because I didn't know that Crockett was a Gator guy. So I guess Nature Gator's having some fun with that. But I do like Sonny Crockett. That's a cool dude. Michael Porter also thinks that James Cook has a big game. Boy, I love the thoughts of that. I do. I love the thoughts of that. Let's go over to dognation.com for a moment. Get some comments over here. Jamie Scott, yeah, Jeff has been, in Orlando the last couple of days. He is going to San Antonio, so I haven't personally talked to Jeff. I'm not really quite sure what he's had going on. We've been so busy with all the stuff we have doing here, but there has been a lot going on there from the recruiting front. I know Jeff's got you covered and all that, but he's been in Orlando. He's going to be in San Antonio, and I believe he's also going to be here for the game, too. T-Bone, checking Thomas T-Bone 86, giving the lousy, stinking Gators. We love that. J-Bob says George Pickens is going to shine on Friday. That's an exciting thing for me to think about. I think, unfortunately, Pickens is still coming back off that injury. I don't mean to be a wet blanket. I hope he's, fully healthy. He was also, away from the team at least for a little while, kind of related to that COVID protocol type stuff. So I don't know. I mean, I'd love to think that George Pickens can be a huge part of this offense on Friday. Here's the one thing that I do know is that Pickens doesn't necessarily need a lot of touches to make a big impact. A couple of touches could be the difference in a win and loss for him. Georgia and Olive says, remember Elvis, Sonny Crockett's pet gator. Yeah, I guess that was supposed to be kind of an homage to the Florida Gators. And as a child, I don't believe I was probably smart enough to understand that. Don wants to see that run game get going. Yeah, I mean, it's important for Georgia to have all facets of the offense tomorrow. It really is. They're going to have to throw the ball some. You can't win a game like this if you don't. But concurrent to that, they're also going to have to run the ball, get some tough yards at times, which Michigan knows that's what Georgia wants to try to do. They're going to have to do that there as well. Jesse S. says he thinks that 24 points would be enough for Georgia. Some more Georgia fans stopped by to say hello here. But Jesse S. says 24 points might be enough for Georgia to get this win on Friday. I still think it's probably about 30. My overall feelings, even though Alabama is a far different team from Michigan, my overall feeling about the game is still pretty similar. I think that Georgia's going to find a way to get 30. I think Georgia's going to try to find a way to keep opponent under 30. I just think that's kind of the way this kind of goes down. I probably like Georgia to win this game somewhere in the neighborhood of 30-21 or 30-23, something along those lines. Probably 30-21 if you want to bring the point spread into the discussion here a bit. I just think that's probably how this goes down. So, obviously the experts are expecting about what Jesse's saying. A winning score. Very low score, a very low scoring game. I sort of get the impression there might be a few more points than that, to be honest with you. So, obviously, those comments are going to continue to kind of roll in, and we'll continue to take those with you as we move ahead to Friday and game day and everything else. So, a bunch of video coverage from us. In fact, we'll be back live here on video coming up in less than 2 hours' time as part of our Go With The Flow presented by R.S. Andrews, looking at the official picks for all the big bowl games, Georgia, Michigan included. We'll do that with you at 1 p.m. today. So be close to the Dog Nation video channels, 1 p.m. today for that. Then plenty of game day coverage, and who knows what other surprise we might have in store. All of it going down with you. Thanks for being here for R.S. Andrews Cool Down. Thanks for being here on Dog Nation Daily, presented by Merriweather and Tharp. Have a great day, everybody, and we will see you tomorrow on game day for the big one between Georgia and Michigan. Can't wait for that. We'll talk to you then.